Hey everybody, this is Jon Croft with Culture Warfare with Jon Croft, and I'm Jon Croft, and Rebecca's here. How you doing tonight, Rebecca?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing great. And did you like our topics over at Media Moses Weekly this week?
Yes, I did. Yeah, it was very exciting to talk about the Chosen Con.
Yeah, and Chosen coming to Prime Video and
Yeah,
other updates like David.
yeah, David the animated movie and series coming to
Mhm.
5 and 2.
Yep, so they're going to do a theatrical release. They didn't get a date or anything like that, but Dallas Jenkins gave a great Dallas Jenkins gave us a great live stream, which gave tons of updates on what 5 and 2 is doing. Five loaves and two fishes is where they get it from. And one of the things is he's now acquiring content by other people who are producing things. And the guys from Slingshot who made David, the animated film about young David, uh, have left Angel Studios apparently, and are now going to be licensing with 5 and 2 to theatrically release the film in America. So that's quite exciting.
It is.
Yeah, beautiful animation.
Yeah, it looks like such a charming movie.
Absolutely. And of course, 5 and 2 has got their own in-house productions they've been doing, including The Chosen Adventures and now Joseph of Egypt, which they are co-producing with Amazon, apparently. So Amazon is funding the production of Joseph of Egypt. They are now currently in production in the New Mexico desert, and it's a 8 episode miniseries, so it should be done within the month, maybe 2 months, but I doubt it would be 2 months, probably maybe a month and a half of shooting. And after this, they have a lot of other shows they are in works releasing, including Bear Grylls, The Chosen and the Wild. And I hear also that after they do Joseph of Egypt, they're going to be doing a Moses movie
Great.
and or series. Not sure if it's a movie or series. And they're going to be doing, which is I think called the Book of Moses.
Oh, well.
And they're going to be doing uh Acts of the Apostles. And we're not certain yet if they'll be using the same actors from The Chosen in Acts of the Apostles. But that would be
Wow.
great if they do.
That would be epic.
Mind blowing. Yeah, because it would be kind of like literally the same actors
Mhm.
becoming the apostles, right? Like that would be crazy. And then we get to see
Peter.
Paul, of course.
Oh, yeah. I'm
Hmm.
thinking of Peter and the sheet is coming down.
Wow.
And the animals are on it
God
and
is
the
saying,
Lord is
eat.
like, eat, and he's like, no.
No, can't
I've
do it.
never had anything unclean.
And the funny thing is, the actor who plays Peter is actually Jewish.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Neat.
So
But
God will
he's
be
gonna be
telling this
like,
Jewish guy,
no,
eat some
really
pork,
like,
man.
yeah, he's gonna be like, really, no.
It won't even be an act. He'll just be like, no.
Like that wasn't hard for me at all.
We love you, Shahar. That's his name. But yeah, he actually works in the IDF as well, the Israeli Defense Force.
Really? I
Yeah.
thought he was, did I hear he was Portuguese? Am I thinking of it somebody
Yeah.
else in the cast?
You're thinking of someone else. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Shahar, the guy who plays Peter, is in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. And so, as you know, they've been very busy over there.
Wow.
And they had to postpone shooting a little bit on their last thing because of what's been happening.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah. Wow.
But they didn't let it stand in their way. They're committed.
That's right. That's right. Well, we wish them the best. And the thing is, our topic here tonight is why the traditional Hollywood system is dead and why. Why and why? Why is it dead? How is it dead? Why is it dead? What's going on there? I saw a video about a dude from a filmmaker, and he talks about Eric. Well, his name is Eric Demeusy, I believe. Eric Demeusy. He made a film called, I think, Proximity. It's like a sci-fi film. And in the process of doing that, he learned a ton about Hollywood. I don't know how long he spent kind of like with the denizens of Hollywood trying to make his film. He ended up making a short film in order to fund the feature film, which is a very common thing to do today. And it works quite well. In fact, he produced another video called Why Make Short Films or something like that. And he was like, don't just make a short film anymore. They used to be popular on YouTube. Now, unless you have a feature to go with that short, just forget about it. Don't even do
Mhm.
it. It's not even going to be seen or heard about. And if somebody talks to you about your short, they will ask you if you have a feature script. And if you say no, well, that relationship's over. So the idea behind shorts now is growing them into something bigger. So I agree with his premise. And we've also talked about Emilio. Remember Emilio Martinez, who's working with the
Yeah.
Chloe Cole movie? He's the director. We've talked about how he's snowballing that into a bigger project by what? Making smaller projects first. He started even smaller than a short. He started with a music video. So that is a great new way, I think. Add even another step for the short where you're producing something even smaller, but maybe still has the grain of the story in it, right? Some kind of grain of the story. And Chloe Cole is in the music video that they produced. And that's what they started with. They started with a music video called, I think it's called Cedar Road.
Mhm.
And you can also see our interview with him and
Mhm.
Chloe if you look through our videos. And we talked with him about the music, or we talked with him about the film industry a little bit and conservatives in the film industry mostly. But we're going to talk about why the traditional Hollywood is dead. And so this guy, Eric Demeusy, discusses that. Actually, we will play some of his video. All right, so here's his first point. What he does is he dispels a few lies. One of them is that filmmaking is glamorous. So
Is glamorous. You think of what you see as filmmaking, and it's the director on set pointing off camera, looking through the viewfinder, wearing his little fancy hat with a scarf around his neck, or he's on a crane, or he's talking to somebody, he's looking through the scope, he's going like this, and it romanticizes the whole thing. Or what you see in public,
so
what is
true.
personified as like the film industry, which is like the red carpets, the interviews, the nice lighting. But the reality is that filmmaking is war.
My film is not about Vietnam. C'est pas au sujet du Vietnam. It is Vietnam.
It's stress,
It is
chaos,
Vietnam.
exhaustion, politics.
Somebody arbitrarily says you got to do it.
Oh yeah, David Lynch. There's lots of videos of him yelling to be at people on set and being like, "Get out of my way." And it's true. A real film set will just, oh my goodness, it'll destroy you. And I mean that quite physically. Like physically, you'll be worn out. Emotionally, you'll be at your wit's end. And then if you work with a studio, they're going to be requiring things of you that you never ever thought would happen. Like, and then the notes you get, and we're not even talking about development, right? But he's just talking about production here. It's really rough. It's not glamorous, but if you really enjoy filmmaking, some of that enjoyment might balance off some of the hell. So, I mean, obviously they showed Coppola saying we went to Vietnam basically by making this film. And he's still making films. He made Megalopolis like last year or something. So, you know, obviously he didn't stop making films. Some of us can't do anything else, so that's what we do. And if we have to put up with the hell of all that, then that's what we have to do. So, but I think he says this is one of the main reasons he made this video, though, to dispel this myth that filmmaking is glamorous. And I'm glad he's doing that. There's a lot of examples of that here. One of the things he says here, let's see.
Formed.
Our script is being operated by committee, and that is not the best way to do it. It's actually the antithesis of how you should make a feature film.
Nice to have.
What does he say here? This is Gladiator he's talking about. This is an Oscar-winning film. His film, he says, was the script was decided by like committee when they're on set, and you just don't do that. So Hollywood has become very inefficient in many ways. This is just inefficiency. Inefficiency problems plague Hollywood films now. And this is not a problem of the filmmaker. This is a problem of the studios. So when I say the traditional Hollywood filmmaking industry, I'm talking about the studios, right? How studio films usually get made. Ridley Scott here has to deal with all the nonsense of that. And he got an Oscar as a result.
Have the script all tied up and locked off and ready to go before you step anywhere near, even on the first day. And that so rarely happens.
Him revealing himself.
That so rarely happens. Now, what does a filmmaker have to do, though? A filmmaker has to have that script ready. But then once he gets to set, what's going to happen? We have no control over that. Now the studio steps in and gets their hands in gets their claws sunk into your film. And since they carry the purse strings, you can't do anything about that, right? You can't stop them. You can yell and complain, but that goes into the same point he made before, right? You're going to have a lot of conflict on set when you're dealing with money bags over here who has control over you and what you can do on set. What can you do with that? So let's see.
I can't wear the toga and then hack the statue into a completely different thing.
And all this stuff is going on as like an internal war that's happening where most of the people on set might not know about it, but then you even just have the stuff while you're on set.
Action, Shelley! Oh, come on. What do you mean roll?
Some of that's just what happens.
Out here and you're going to be ready.
Different departments fighting about who should be doing this, who should be doing that. Don't touch this, don't touch that. There could be a lot of tension on set, and it really depends on like who is being the leader on set and how to sort of get everybody to work together. I love this quote from Stanley Kubrick where he says that shooting a movie is the worst milieu for creative work ever devised by man. It's a noisy physical apparatus. It is difficult to concentrate, and you have to do it from 8:30 to 6:30, 5 days a week. It's not an environment an artist would ever choose to work in. The only advantage it has is that you must do it and you can't procrastinate.
Yeah, but Kubrick was a control freak. And I think that what he was describing was the perfect environment he would like to shoot a film in, and that just doesn't exist in filmmaking. And that also has nothing to do with the studios. That's just making a film. But the studios actually complicated it even more. So he talks about, he shows these filmmakers responding to the darkness of making films and how they have to put on a good face before the media, but really they're just crying inside. And a lot of that is just how films are.
Another one that I want to talk about is that the Oscars are more like a political campaign.
The Oscars.
People always say, well, the best films rise to the top. Well, not necessarily at the Oscars. When I was younger growing up, we used to watch the Oscars on television. I always used to think that the Oscars was sort of like an award ceremony where you took all the films that came out that year and you curated them and you tried to find the best ones based on merit, based on what audiences liked, based on what critics liked.
Not true.
And you took the best ones and you chose those. I didn't realize that it was sort of like a political campaign. The moment that I realized that there actually is a campaigning part to the Oscars is really where I got thrown off, where you realize that in order to even be considered as a contender for Best Picture or whatever the category might be, you actually, and the studio and the producers actually have to submit your film and then petition for it. When you live in Los Angeles during the Oscars.
Yeah, he's going to talk about how LA, you can see it everywhere, especially during Oscar season. You see all these for consideration ads. That is an enormous amount of money that these production houses spend and the studios spend to basically do a second marketing campaign to market your film like a campaign, like a political campaign to get your film winning in the Oscars. Why? Because they make marketing dollars off of that too. Like, and they make their studio more famous and their actor more famous and their director more famous by doing that. But a lot of it is just the politics he mentioned. It's just a political thing. So many people talk about how the Oscars should pick a better film or whatever. And so there's films that, get good buzz at Sundance. They do well in theaters. Maybe they don't do well in theaters. But guess what happens? They spend more money on some of these films in their Oscar marketing campaign than they do anywhere else, even buying the film. They'll buy the film for a few $1 million, put it out in theaters, not even market it. And then they put 20, $30 million into marketing it at the Oscars.
Hmm.
I mean, and this is something that independent filmmakers just cannot do. We don't have the money to do that kind of thing. So you have to team up with a studio or somebody else to like market your film in the Oscars. And what if your film is a better film, but you can't get that money? You don't get seen at the Oscars. So this is just far more political than a lot of people knew about the film industry. It really is kind of not a very meritorious system like it used to be.
Hmm.
Not as meritorious at all. So, and if Hollywood can make one film look better than another through marketing, then they will. The film itself might not be that much better. So marketing can do a lot for you in Hollywood. There's more that he talks about. I wanted to get through these easier ones first, which is, I think filmmaking is glamorous. If you think about it, if you've done any this kind of work, you already know this. It's not glamorous at all. The studios overcomplicate it as well. Mr. Purse Strings is going to make it hard for you. And the Oscars is also not something to bet on when you're a filmmaker. You have to have political connections to do all that. So let's go back here to the beginning where he talks about what he's doing here.
Because in reality, filmmaking isn't as glamorous as it seems. It's war. And the deeper you get into the film industry, the more that those illusions start to break. No one tells you how films really get made, or how film festivals work, or the truth behind the Oscars, or what production companies really do. I'm going to walk through some of the biggest misconceptions that I had when starting out and what I've actually learned from navigating the system as a filmmaker. First, I'm going to start off with film festivals. Anybody can submit to Sundance and South by Southwest and get their film in if it's good, right? Festivals are put out there as though they're like a level playing field for anybody to just submit. You make a short film, you can submit it. You make a feature film, you can submit it. And
That's
your
how they sell
chances
it.
are the same as everybody else in getting in. And while that is mostly true, there are some things to understand about how the inner workings go in a film festival. I remember when I was just in high school making short films, and me and my friends would look at film festivals like Sundance and look at the films that were playing that year, and we'd go, whoa, there's a movie that's at the Sundance Film Festival that has Kevin Bacon in it. And I remember thinking, like, why is there a film in the film festival that has like a really well-known actor in it? I thought festivals were supposed to be for like independent filmmakers or even students like myself. I thought in high school I could make a short film or I could make a feature film if I could put one together and I could submit it to a film festival. But when I saw that there was a film on that level that had a well-known actor attached to it, it really made me think, like, why is a film that has a successful actor in a film festival like that? Couldn't they just go straight to the theater? Like, they already have a well-known actor in it. And that's one of the things that I've come to realize, that I've come to learn, is that film festivals are a business first and foremost. Film festivals do tend to lean toward film productions that either have some kind of name attached to it, whether it's an actor, director, producer, writer, or something.
Yeah, so he's going to tell you, like, what he discovered with Kevin Bacon, right, is that this gives that film a leg up from your indie film that doesn't have Kevin Bacon in it or some kind of name actor. That film is obviously going to get a leg up, not only in getting into the festival, right, and get that block, so everybody can see that picture, but it's going to get a leg up on awards and buzz about the film, right, and press about the film. The Kevin Bacon film is probably going to get a lot more attention than your no-name film, right? And so, one of the other things talked about here is that the studios could throw their support behind a picture, right? Kind of like the Oscars. And in doing that, that's going to help that festival. And so the festival has a vested interest in supporting that film. So similar to the Kevin Bacon scenario, right? Film festivals, because what he says is true here, which is that film festivals are a business, they are going to support the people who throw them more money. So sadly, similarly to what we mentioned about the Oscars, right? It really is weighted on the side of the studios, and it's weighted on the side of people who can throw a few dollars under the table to them so that they will support that particular film. And if all the studios do is make it with an independent director, or they make it with an independent label, or they just call it independent by like marketing it as an independent film, well, they can just put that film in festivals and get a bunch of buzz, right, for that film, which is a lot cheaper than running a whole marketing campaign and putting it out in theaters. It's actually cheaper for them to take over the festival circuit than it is to run a whole theatrical campaign. When you, as an independent filmmaker, because you have no money to put into your thing, you're going to just get drowned out by these actually studio pictures taking the space up at this festival. So, if you have some kind of connection, right, with the film festival, this means that programmers there will prioritize those films over yours. And then even if studios get involved, then their stuff's going to get prioritized even higher. And this just pushes out all the great new indie artistic filmmakers that are trying to come up in Hollywood. They don't get seen and heard because actually it's not meritorious, right? So the corruption that's been happening here is ensuring that new art does not make it to Hollywood, and new young filmmakers that don't have any money are not going to be seen and heard. This is why Hollywood is very insular. It's very Hollywood for Hollywood's sake. It's not about the art, because why do that? Now you've got this risky new filmmaker that's not going to make the kind of thing you want them to make. They might be not under your control, right? And so control is a theme here. It's one of the themes here of why the traditional Hollywood system is dead, is that they continue to want control of their product, even above and beyond the idea of getting new blood in and new art in. They would like to just control their product from cradle to grave, which is also why they've gone streamer. They can control the licensing of their own product from cradle to grave then. They don't ever have to share it with anybody. When previously they would have to like share some money with theaters, share some money with other deals, and now they don't have to do that. So it makes it easier for them. It's not necessarily more profitable. And that's one of the secrets here, is that the theatrical model is actually more profitable, but they won't tell you that. They really want control. Like that's the thing that they're most obsessed with. So let's see what else he says here. He talks about film festivals more.
With a different level of attention than, say, somebody that submits through Film Freeway. And that's something that's a bit of a misconception to the general audience. The other thing is that there are certain programs or lab systems like the Sundance Lab that's really good at nurturing new talent, finding people. But
Sundance has a labs program where they nurture filmmakers to come up in their system. And this is just another way to curate. Instead of curating films, right, then they literally can curate an artist and make sure that that filmmaker is creating the kind of work that they want to see, right? So it's just another way of ensuring that the new filmmakers don't come in and produce the kind of work that they don't want to see. They'd rather see a certain kind of work from a filmmaker that they have literally taught to make the kind of work that they'd like to see. So they're like creating their own little filmmaker. It's another way they control the content. So let's see. They also talk about what production companies really do. And that seems kind of like a silly question, but it's actually not.
The fee. Another one is that studios don't always produce the films that they release. You might see a
Right.
film, maybe a great independent film, and you see a production logo on it and you think, oh, this company made this film. Maybe it's A24, maybe it's Lionsgate, whatever the case is, you think this is the company that paid for the movie, that financed it, that funded it, that produced it. But the reality,
Right. The reality is what? They license it. But here's the key here, and this is another reason that the traditional Hollywood industry is dead. Hollywood has been, for the last 20 years or so, relying more and more and more on independent filmmakers. So literally, they could have even fund, Universal could fund an independent artist to make a film, right? And then they make their own little company, which every film is its own little company, right? And they play this little shell game with companies, by the way. But what they want to do is ensure that the product is good before they buy it and license it. So oftentimes they will not even fund the picture, right? And they will ask the independent filmmaker to foot the bill for the picture. And so independent filmmakers that work with Hollywood often have to do this. But it's even worse for independent filmmakers who aren't even known and who don't have any money and don't have investors of their own, right? So oftentimes, a filmmaker will literally have to borrow like hundreds of thousands of dollars, like get a loan, maybe even $1 million to make their film. And then Hollywood can come in and swoop in and take ownership of that film from the filmmaker. And they might not even pay you enough to survive or make it. They might just come in and take it because you're in dire straits and you need help. And so they'll come in and own your property. And they might not even give you anything after that. So, this is a really tough situation for a lot of filmmakers who have put all their money and all their effort into this picture, and they have nothing left, and except maybe a contact at a studio, and the studio comes in and sees it and says, okay, we can help you, but we can't give you all the money that you're asking. We'll just get this just so we can distribute it. And what is the filmmaker going to do if they can't pay all their debts, right? What are they going to say no to that deal? They often don't have a choice. So, this really puts a filmmaker in a tough situation when a filmmaker is just trying to make relationships in Hollywood, and Hollywood might even pay them just half of the amount of money it costs them to make the film. They've got all these debts, but the filmmaker will reason actually quite pragmatically, well, if I at least work with Hollywood and they will pay me some of my debts off, then I'll try to work in Hollywood and get another job and make more money to pay off these other debts too. And so at least this relationship can help save me in the future. And they're not wrong. They might have to do that. But the problem is, again, they're in a kind of a debt slavery to Hollywood. And they're hoping that the glitz and the glamour will eventually rub off and the Hollywood will eventually see their value. And sometimes that just never comes. And you're always kind of relegated to second and third chair instead of getting a first look deal or something like that you really want in Hollywood. And so one thing we forget is that Hollywood has relegated their own production work to a bunch of independent artists that they can just say no to anytime they want. And so these independent producers and directors are really kind of slaves to Hollywood, working on the farm of Hollywood, picking their cotton for them and hoping that Hollywood's going to throw them a bone. And they hold all the cards because they distribute all their work and they can make them rich and famous, so people are surviving on the smoke of these dreams and wishes. But really, Hollywood can just take your work out from under you and you have nothing. And then they can use it however they want with their own streamer or their own platform. They don't even have to distribute it the way they initially told you to, because they could defeat you in court. So, they might even make deals with you and then not fulfill them. And so this is a really tough situation for artists. This really presents a situation that is unwinnable for most artists in Hollywood. And a lot of it is just that people don't understand that Hollywood is always going to put itself in the winning position. Like the house rules, right? The house always wins. So Hollywood sees itself as in that power position. And they really don't care about new talent. Even if you're the best filmmaker on the globe, they really don't care. That's one of the things he's going to talk about here too.
And another thing, you might think, well, once you make it as a big filmmaker or producer or whatever, then you can like get around this bureaucracy and you can kind of make whatever project you want to make, right? That's what you would think. But let's take Steven Spielberg, for instance. You would think whatever he
Biggest
says that he
filmmaker on
wants
the
to make a
globe.
movie about, there's probably going to be some studios and producers that are just going to jump on board and do it no matter what. But that's not the case. For instance, his film Lincoln, he was trying to get made for 10 years. He fought really hard for that not to go to HBO. The studios didn't want to release it theatrically. Thought maybe it was more of like a historical biopic and that they could do better releasing it on HBO. He had to fight really hard for that to be a theatrical release. And this is Steven Spielberg. Like, this is probably the top director of all time. And when you think about it, a lot of the top directors that you know of, maybe Denis Villeneuve and the projects that he made recently, are things that are pre-existing material, like Blade Runner or Dune. Christopher Nolan, you think they just make whatever projects they want, but a lot of the films that they're doing might be like one that's an original piece of concept and one that's a studio film. So they do one for the studio, one for themselves. And usually that's a pretty good balance and a trade-off. But a lot of times it will be that the studio will come to them and make something. Even thinking about some of Spielberg's latest project, think of Ready Player One, that was based on a really critically acclaimed book. And so I think the studio was pretty on board to make a film like that. And this is kind of the thing about Spielberg. He is kind of the perfect filmmaker in that his vision naturally is what is commercial. I think what happens even when you're a successful filmmaker or producer, there still are projects that studios are keen on making. And I think it's a thing where what you desire to make has to sort of line up with what the studio has on board. It's kind of like...
Right. Yeah, I think he's correct here that there is a pragmatic reality here, which is that studios tend to think financially. They think about different things than what a lot of filmmakers are thinking about. So it's true, but his point, again, is that these filmmakers are not in charge of this. The studios are in charge of these decisions. And the quicker the filmmaker realizes that, the better it is for them. Meaning they need to have really strong relationships with these guys. And if they don't, they're not going to be able to work with them on the kind of picture that the studio wants to see, right? And they're going to have to keep fighting and fighting back and forth about it and might never get that picture made, right? Because the studio could always claim it's just not commercially viable, or it's just not a hot kind of property right now, right? It's not a known IP. It doesn't have the kind of actor that they want to see in the driver's seat of this picture. So there's all kinds of reasons the studio can give to just not do it. But what they want to convey to you is that they're in charge. And so this is, again, it's a really chilling effect on the arts and arts for art's sake. And it's a chilling effect on the power of filmmakers in Hollywood. They really don't have the power. I think now it probably is someone like Christopher Nolan, but even he has trouble all the time with getting his pictures made. But yes, Steven Spielberg had a ton of issues as well. not only in the 90s, but in the 2000s. That's one of the things we'll talk about in the future, not just about the awards show. And the way we'll talk about all these things is not about just about how Hollywood is now and why it's dead in the industry, but how to correct it, as in what we should be doing instead, right? So an award show should be meritorious. So you have to have certain things as a function of the award show that prevent it from being kind of backroom deals, right? You have to kind of prevent that. And it has to be part of the structure itself of the award show. It can't just be a policy that you have, that people know, because you could always behind the scenes just break that policy. So it has to be a structure of how the award show functions. There's other things too, including festivals. And festivals also have to be meritorious in my view as well. We can talk about how that is. I think what you have to do as it comes to, we'll talk about these other things too. We talked about what production companies do versus distributors. And by the way, Angel Studios is a distributor. They're not a production company. So a lot of people that don't understand Angel Studios, they don't know, first of all, they understand how Hollywood works in the sense that Hollywood, like A24, for example, they got known by being a distributor first, not by being a production company at all. And so that's actually how they got known and how they became big. And Angel knows this, and so that's what they're doing. But that also means you can't really complain too much if you're like a Christian or you're faith-based and you're like complaining about the content of an Angel film. Well, they didn't produce that film. So just understand how this works. But also we'll talk about acquisitions and green lights. And we talked a little bit about the fact that you really don't have power in Hollywood as an artist. So how to change that is going to be definitely a big concern in the future. But it's doable. It's possible. Let's hear him talk about acquisitions here.
It's already done. All right, here's another one. A big studio buys your film so that they can make it. Say, for instance, you make an awesome short film and it gets a lot of buzz and it gets attention. It gets a Vimeo staff pick, whatever. Producers are seeing it. Studios are calling you to take meetings. You're going in and pitching ideas for a bigger part of this movie. Like you have a feature idea for this short film or whatever. Say that happens. And then say the next level of that happens where they actually go, we love this. We want to buy this and develop it. And you're thinking like, oh my gosh, this studio is going to buy this movie. They're going to develop it. We're going to make this movie happen. That's not always the case. What might happen sometimes is that a studio might buy your script just so that they can rewrite it or just so that they can shelve it because they have another movie idea that they're making and they don't want anything else to compete with it. This is a really difficult thing for filmmakers because when you sell something to a studio or a studio agrees to it, you get an executive producer that's excited about it at a studio that's reputable and you think, I'm going to make this movie. That is the biggest dream because then you think you're on your way, you've got this big backing behind you and they're going to push you forward and help you make this thing. But what happens a lot of time, and you've probably heard this term, development hell. Something gets stuck into a kind of a loop. You might have a lot of people that are trying to chime in and fix problems about something this person didn't like about this, or this executive didn't like this, or this producer didn't like that thing, and they keep tweaking it, and then they're talking to the director or the creative that sold it to the studio, and then there's a creative difference on it. Yep. That's not what their original idea was.
It never ends.
It just was crazy. I mean, the producers, they didn't, I had one meeting, they wanted to have him in like Michael Jordan shorts. We see him wearing corduroy as Superman. Like, then they said, maybe give him boots, but like on the side of a van, like with flames on it.
And so then it just kind of gets stuck into this thing where you're trying to develop it where everybody's happy and nobody ends up being happy. It just kind of falls apart. I've seen this with short film projects where an awesome short film either got crowdfunded and it got put online and it got a lot of buzz and producers called and it got purchased by a major studio and they were going to do it and it just got developed and then nothing ever became of it. A lot of times you'll see very promising
Very
concepts
sad.
that are done
Yeah.
as short films and they're put out there and it's like, why isn't this made into a bigger film? Like they need to take the risk and just make this thing, but the studio purchases it, they try to develop it, and then for whatever reason, it just never comes out. Another example
Yep.
of, I've seen this from a filmmaker that I knew personally who had made an independent film and he sold it to a studio to think that this studio is going to distribute it. But the truth of it was the concept and the premise of that movie was very similar to a major film that they were about to release with a big name
Right.
actor. So they bought his movie just so that they could shelve it. So there was no competition or
No
distraction
competition,
from
yep.
this big movie that they were trying to sell. And that's something that people don't realize and a lot of filmmakers don't know, is that studios sometimes will just buy projects just so that they can own them, not necessarily that they're going to make them.
You see what I said about control? It's so they can control it. It's
Yeah.
not so they can make you a special filmmaker or get your film out there. They have the money to get their own version of the story that you are producing. They have the amount of money to take that and shoot it in their own way and get it done in their own way. So that, you know, like if you have some good ideas in your script or something, they could purchase your script, use your ideas in another script, and get that one produced instead. So they really don't need you at that point. And they might be giving you the runaround for the next 5 years and in hopes that you're going to do something, give them more ideas or something. So he mentioned development hell. He mentioned the fact that acquisition does not mean you're going to get it produced, right? It doesn't. And even if they say it's greenlit, that doesn't mean it's really going to happen. So this is just how Hollywood has been working for the last probably, I wouldn't say 20 years, but probably 15 years, is that they have an incredible amount of power to just do things their own way. And they really don't feel like they need the filmmakers. And instead they will kind of like use their power to control your own IP. And so the idea here to me is that what independent filmmakers really need to get through their head is that they also don't need Hollywood. But there is something that they do need, and that is they need a financial incentive to do that. So, in other words, they need to survive without Hollywood. They need to find a way to survive without Hollywood. So a new pipeline, basically, of distribution has to happen outside of Hollywood. Because essentially what Hollywood does best that the filmmaker really can't do is effective distribution and marketing. Hollywood really can't make films very well. What they do is do effective marketing and distribution. And so once filmmakers can substitute that, can do that themselves and learn to do that themselves, right? They're not going to need Hollywood. You know, the truth is, yes, Hollywood has a lot of infrastructure. Hollywood has a lot of resources. Hollywood has the money to make these big budget pictures. But Hollywood has also kind of pushed themselves out of the business because the business is always supposed to be about storytelling. And if you don't really cater to the greatest storytellers and artists to make the best pictures, you're cutting yourself off at the knees. So Hollywood, that's what Hollywood's been doing for the last 10 years or so. It's just cutting themselves off at the knees as it comes to the storytelling quality. So what we have to realize, and we'll be talking about this more in the future, is that a new model is forming. Angel Studios has it partially. And what they have understood is that they need to do marketing direct to the fan base, direct to the fans. And the best way to do that is through crowdfunding campaigns. They're quite effective if done well. And, you know, we've talked about Emilio Martinez, how he's snowballing. You could call it snowballing but basically you start with a small project and you raise funds for that, and then you snowball that into a bigger project, into a bigger project, into a bigger project. And every time you do a campaign like this, you're building more fans and you're providing another product for people to enjoy. And so you're building this relationship with your fan base. And this really could go into every aspect, every creative aspect even of filmmaking. There are hundreds of decisions that have to occur in filmmaking. And if you have a strong relationship with your fans, there's no reason why you cannot involve them even more in the funding and the creation of your picture. So as fans get involved in good work, get involved in who they think are the better filmmakers outside of Hollywood, and as we really get to know how to do this better, we're going to be able to go around Hollywood. Well, we might even be able to do our own theatrical releases. And if people start understanding the marketing better, because distribution really is technology. The technology is getting to the degree that an independent filmmaker can four-wall, what's called four-walling. They can four-wall their own theatrical release, right? Because a lot of this stuff's just digital files now. And so you can four-wall your own theatrical release, and you can also do a lot online as well. And you can start a campaign that funds more than just a feature film, right? You could fund your short, you can get a lot of merchandise out there. You can fund a comic book. You could fund a lot of stages of development can occur through crowdfunding. And so if you study some of these new models out here, including, like I mentioned, Angel Studios, but also Lore TV is another model. Lore TV is like halfway between a crowdfunding platform and Netflix. So you can watch whatever you want on the platform with a subscription, but also that subscription literally can be applied to the future product that you want to see. So you can kind of like delegate or determine where that money should go and support your favorite projects coming up in the future. So I think that's quite a good model as well. I'd like to see more community on their site. And I think the more we build community, the more we really don't need Hollywood. Let me just say that the traditional method that Hollywood has used for 100 years is really quite dead. And the reason it's dead is because Hollywood has squandered its opportunities to make great art. It's only used the blockbuster model in order to tell their own ideological stories, not to make money, and to secure its own control over IP and its control over artists, as opposed to letting artists make great work and tell great stories. So it's betrayed their own calling. MGM, art for art's sake was their motto. And Hollywood doesn't do that anymore. They wouldn't even know what that means now. They're making propaganda for ideological sake. Like that's what they're doing. It's all about ideology for them now. And so the control that they want to exert over your IP, it's just a piece of product to them now, a piece of content, is the whole game for them. That's why they're trying to move completely to streamers, so they can have cradle to grave control over your IP, and they never have to share it. They don't even want the theaters to get any money. They want the theaters to die, and then they can force everything through the internet to you. So This is not about art or cinema or storytelling or community. It's not about any of that for them now. And film used to be a wonderful art form where it builds communities, it builds buzz, it builds whole empires of merchandising and and putting the storytelling into your kids' hands, like, where you can talk about all these things and have community discussions about like the importance of Luke Skywalker or whatever. Like, and if that story is how it impacts people, all of these things meant something to people. And not to be all about the nostalgia aspect of it, because I'm not even about the past of all these things. What I want is a better future. That's mostly what I think about. And so I have a clear vision. I try to see a clear vision about what the future can be about this. And to me, it's about artists reaching directly to fans through their campaigns and then providing that story to them in whatever way the fans want. And that might include any kind of additional media or merchandise that the fan base wants. You can communicate directly to your fan base. It also doesn't have to be as expensive as Hollywood wants to make it. It can be far cheaper. So all these huge budgets that Hollywood spends to make these pictures, it should be a fraction of that, like a fifth of that. So like a blockbuster should be costing 50 million, not 250 million, not 300, 400 million. It should be 50 million, should be plenty to make almost anything you'd want. So because the technology is really supposed to make these things cheaper to produce. Sure, a lot of things are going to have to be in person. A lot of things are going to have to be like live sets and costumes. But a lot of the stuff really can be done very virtually. And this is supposed to actually make the product cheaper, not more expensive. So Hollywood has just really squandered the wealth that they've gathered. And they haven't used it to make great art. And so what we need to do is go straight to the fans. That's really how you do it. Don't worry about what Hollywood thinks of you. Don't worry about if Hollywood's going to pay you. All they want is control over your product. So I would say don't give it to them. Instead, continue working with your fans directly to make new art that is better than Hollywood. And sure, we can say that easily, but the truth is, Hollywood's going to have a great quality of product, but they're not going to have what you can have, which is artistic vitality. You can really make powerful points through your art. You can talk directly to people that want stories about them. You can talk directly about social issues in ways that Hollywood doesn't like. If it's against the Hollywood narrative, that might even make money just because of that. Why? Because Hollywood's been trying to prevent these other kinds of stories. I know because I was trying to sell it to them at AFM, and nobody would take it because it was against the acceptable dogma in Hollywood. They don't want that kind of stuff. So if you just go around Hollywood, guess what? There's a whole dearth of stories that I think people want to hear and want to see. Why? Because Hollywood's not giving it to them. And just for that simple fact, you can go around Hollywood and go direct to fans and give them what they really want, which is great storytelling, real storytelling, truthful storytelling, not a bunch of fake stuff from propagandistic Hollywood producers who want to sell their ideology to you. No, that's how they're squandering all their wealth. Instead, what we want is award shows that are meritorious, that actually show great artistry. Sure, we might understand that filmmakers don't understand the whole business, and they need to start making good business decisions as well. But guess what? You don't need a studio to tell you that. You don't need a bunch of studio heads to tell you, no, you're not going to be allowed to make this picture because it won't make money. Guess what you can do? You can go straight to your fans and they'll tell you what they want to see, right? So that's your marketplace. That's you going direct to your market and figuring out what the market actually wants, not hearing it through a middleman, which is some Hollywood executive telling you, oh, this is just not popular. Well, what if they're wrong? Now you're screwed, right? So no, just go direct to your fans. As it comes to filmmaking being glamorous, that's just always been true. Filmmaking is just not glamorous. You should love the storytelling of it. And all that extra work should be part of the whole game. We can also understand that we don't need our work to be greenlit by Hollywood or acquired by Hollywood. We can just stop worrying about any of that stuff. Why would you worry about someone giving you validation from Hollywood? These people are not very smart. So you don't need their green light or your acquisition or their approval. No, don't even get their approval. Understand what production companies do and what distributors do. We take the risks as the filmmakers. So we should get the rewards. Right? If we find a way to distribute it where we can pay off our debts and keep going, we should do that. And I think we can do that through crowdfunding and through going direct to our fans. I think that's possible. Because what you can do is pay the film off with the crowdfund. And then any additional funds you might get after making the product is just cheese on top of it, right? So that's the way to fund it. Already figure out how much it's going to cost to make it, crowdfund it for that amount, and anything additional is just profit, right? Now you don't have to worry about Hollywood. So festivals also should be like the awards. They should be meritorious, and the structure of the awards show itself should be part of that. So that does need to occur because communities are important. People letting you know what they want through your fan base is one thing, but then the wider audience, the people that don't even know who you are, those people really need to discover you. And that's the way to discover you, through a festival or through an award show. In my view, that's a great way to discover you because it's about merit. It's not about a great trailer you cut or a great commercial or someone talking you up on a podcast or something. No, it's about the literal merit of your filmmaking. And if you have a great meritorious award show or festival, people can see that. People will know that. There's a great story about the film Sorcerer, which was William Friedkin. And this was the guy who made The Exorcist, right? So he's a very lauded filmmaker. He gets a lot of support from Hollywood to make Sorcerer, which is kind of a remade story in the past, but it was a very skillfully told story, really great story. And he makes this great picture. They spend a ton of money making this great picture. This is when Hollywood knew what art was, right? So if you haven't seen Sorcerer, you should watch it. But it was New Hollywood, right? Late 70s, early 80s. This was in the late 70s. I think it was 77 or something like that. Oh, I know what it is. It literally is 77. Why? Because of what I'm about to say is it came out at the same time Star Wars did. So what's going to happen? Star Wars is going to defeat it at the box office and every other picture as well. So Sorcerer goes down in history mostly unknown for years because they made this great piece of art and the blockbuster model shows up and blows up. And this kind of like made for kids sci-fi just goes crazy. But this artist, William Friedkin, who makes Sorcerer, becomes basically unknown after that. He makes this great piece of art. He even uses Tangerine Dream, I think. I think it was Vangelis who did Blade Runner. And so this kind of like synth music was just popular at that time. It's really great stuff. My favorite film is Blade Runner, so I love that stuff. And Sorcerer is like that. It has that kind of vibe to it. I think that that was kind of like a really big hit against Hollywood making pure art, right? Pure art just kind of starts to go down the tubes, right? Because what did they find out? The almighty dollar wins at the end of the day. And that's the popular thing that's coming through the blockbuster model. Blockbuster model happens when you take big risks and get big rewards. So that's how that works. It's not about small pictures that are artistic, right? It's about big pictures that appeal to wide audiences. And then the marketing campaign just gets shoved down your throat. And then you have to go because everybody else is going. You get the FOMO effect. So that's how blockbusters work. And now that model is done, right? Because Hollywood doesn't care about the money anymore. They really don't. They care about the ideology, right? So it used to be art, and then it became blockbuster and money related. And now it's just ideology. That's all they care about now in Hollywood. So you cannot run a studio system that way. Even when they did the Hays Code back in the 30s, they put in place a bunch of prevention so that propaganda would not be occurring, right? They weren't trying to make films that were propagandistic, you know, and now here we are. We're doing a bunch of propaganda. It's very sad what the industry has become, but the truth is, because of technology, because of the internet, and because there's been some trailblazers before us, we don't need Hollywood anymore. That's just the truth. But also, I think people need to know that streamers are not the solution. Streamers are a walled garden of content, and it's a cradle to grave model that doesn't use release windows. So it's not dynamic. It's not reaching out for more clientele and customers. And it's also not using the release windows to make greater profits. And a lot of the reason that people do streamers, though, is because they don't know how to do marketing anymore. They just dump it on their platform, right? And it's a real shame. So the cinematic experience gets lost. The relationship with fans and community gets lost, and profits go south. Streamers generally don't make money, and yet everyone wants to make a streamer, but they're not doing the research. The streamers don't make money. So what we need again is dynamic release windows, and direct to fans products, like, providing fans what they want and having relationships, community through the internet so that you're building the kind of product that they want to see. Not this thing where this is top down, you're just imposing on customers what they're supposed to have. That's what Hollywood likes to do. Just, you're going to watch our next slop picture because we told you to. I think that's the past. But I don't think cinema is dead. I don't think theaters are dead. I don't even think DVDs are dead. I still think physical media is important and valuable. And sure, you could stream stuff, but don't rely on that model, right? As a business model. You have to reach out for these other forms of media. And you have to provide a lot more kinds of products than just the film itself. You have to provide a lot more. So, these stories need to be good enough to justify all of that effort. If the stories are just some fun thing you're working on the weekends, that's just not good enough. Like, it's got to be a big enough, powerful enough story to justify all that excitement from fans. So it's true that our storytelling hasn't been all there in the last few years either. That's mostly just Hollywood in the business of making slop, It's rubbing off on people. But we need to get back to making great stories for the fans and not worrying about the model anymore in Hollywood. It's dead. It's dead, guys. So, what do you think about that, Rebecca?
Yeah. It's got to be the fans deciding what film they want to see and funding it.
Yeah, essentially. They're essentially your boss as a filmmaker. Your
Yeah.
fans are really your boss. And so make that relationship very clear. Tell them that you appreciate them. Tell them that, this is what you'd like to do. And if they like it, then they can help fund you and make it happen. Just as simple as that.
And it makes more sense to gather together, like to come together, a group of people that know what they want to see
Yep,
and that they could connect with the filmmaker that wants to make that
absolutely. Yeah,
instead
I
of
don't see why not.
instead of just watching whatever, Netflix wants to curate for you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, get involved. Actually help a new great artist come up in the ranks and make new great stuff instead of just accepting whatever Hollywood wants to shove down your throat. Or like not being so passive. Don't be so passive. Be active in trying to make good content happen. Make the kind of content you really want to see happen.
Yeah.
There are people doing that stuff. Like there's like remember that animated I think it's a mini series called St. George.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so cool. They've got a few promos they're doing that are pretty cool. That's the kind of stuff I think that's going to be exciting for the future.
Yeah. People want to see that.
St. George. It's like St. George and the Dragon, right?
Yeah.
All right, you guys. So there is plenty of ways around this problem. But stop trying to hold on to Hollywood. It's not going to be around if we keep forgetting this and we keep just continue trying to do what Hollywood's trying to sell us. Well, that's how the culture crumbles. So instead of that, let's learn from this and let's make something better. So where can people find you, Rebecca?
You can find me writing on Substack and also on YouTube at Rebecca Loves Jesus. Where can people find you, John?
All right. Me too. Yeah, I'm on YouTube mostly and X and MediaMoses.com. You can find me on X at Jon Croft and the Media Moses, and YouTube here on Culture Warfare and Media Moses, and MediaMoses.com. So I hope to do more on Substack soon, but I haven't really been having the time to do that right now, but that's okay. All right, you guys, have a great weekend. Make sure to give a salute to the artist who makes life worth living. See ya later, guys. Bye.